hola. Nice to see you again in this second day of CannabiSalud. Data and technology helps to drive every industry now. When used effectively, it can lower operational costs and utilize resources in a more effective manner. Data collection and use are essential to the cannabis industry in so many ways. Please welcome Brad Moore, CEO and board member at Global Cannabis Application Group, a passionate business leader with a rich history in technology and financial markets. Welcome, Brad.
Thanks. Good afternoon. I'm going to try to say this correctly. I'm going to get it wrong. Buenas tardes? Is that close? Okay, thank you. My name is Brad Moore. I'm the CEO of Global Cannabis Applications Corp. We are a Canadian-based technology firm out of Vancouver, Canada. You know, this has been an amazing event in terms of the content, the quality. I had the opportunity to meet with Lorena when I was speaking at MJ BizCon to talk a little bit about what we do in a seminar called Beyond Seed to Sale. And Lorena said, you need to come down and have a conversation with us. So once again, Lorena, gracias, thank you very much. Thanks to everybody on the team, to Mariana, who's been incredible, getting me from the airport after we filled out the customs forms wrong 4 times. I don't know how I got that wrong. And then to the tech team that helped me with my video. We've got like 8 videos embedded in this presentation, so it's been a little bit heavier. And I kept bugging them about Canada beating Mexico in soccer the other day, and they still didn't. So they threatened to turn off and delete the presentation today if I said it one more time. So thanks, guys. Look, GCAC is a blockchain company. We used to say we are a technology company with a cannabis problem, but really what we are, instead of saying what we do, you know, I want to say what our goal is. And our goal is about better outcomes for medical cannabis patients. And that's actually what we care about the most. We believe there's a better way of doing things. And if you listen to any of the other conversations that have happened, there needs to be a new narrative, a new conversation. We all know that cannabis has several benefits, but the regulations don't seem to match it. When you're trying to measure a product, and I think this was really with our other speakers that were talking about EU GMP standards, you have formulations and you have a set of rules about, like, for example, the COVID vaccine and a way to create processes. Then on the other side of that, you have these conversations about a plant. And that's what it is. It's a plant, and it's a unique plant. It's actually a very sophisticated plant, and we don't know what all the molecules do. But what's important about it is we ask people to put it in their bodies, right? And we ask them to put it in their bodies as an actual medicine. And, you know, a good example, and I'll kind of hop right into this right now, make sure I'm doing this correctly, is when you take a look and you ask somebody to put something into their body, they should be able to know what they're going to do is going to have a repeatable effect. What's going to be the impact on it? I don't know, you know, my own experience, I've always been a patient advocate, and then last year I actually became a patient. You know, in November 2020, I was diagnosed with an early stage form of colon cancer. And during that period of time, I underwent 25 radiation treatments over a 5-week period. I underwent 52 chemo treatments. And at the end of it, I had a sunburn where the sun doesn't naturally shine on the inside or the outside. And it was, let's put it this way, I wasn't walking like this for an extended period of time. And I was in an incredible amount of pain. I was very sick. And that was the cost of staying alive. And, you know, when I went to the actual you know, there we go. When I actually went to the cancer clinic, and this is in Canada, I said, what about medical cannabis? And you know what they told me? We don't know what to tell you. But we do know what morphine will do for you. We do know what this laundry list of other opiate-based creams and things that will help you with swelling will do. And that, you know, I'm a guy, I don't drink, I don't drug, you know, I'm a veteran, so I had to make a choice in my life about what I would put into my body after I came back from overseas. And so I had made that choice a long time ago. So I was really nervous about taking morphine. I was intimidated by it. But you know what intimidated me more? Was taking something and having an adverse reaction and ending up in the emergency because I had a seizure on top of everything else that I was going through. So I went where I knew that there was data and things that could help me go through. See, because when you're sick, you don't have the luxury of being creative. And that goes back to a conversation that I had in 2018 when I was at an event in London, England, where I met, there was a lady there, she's actually from Greece, but she was Canadian, and she was there was a little boy, I don't know if you guys are around, remember his name was Billy, and it was about access to cannabis in Ireland. And in the next room of the conference were all the cultivators talking about their yields, talking about how much money they were gonna make and what a good investment. And I'm ashamed to say 80% of them were Canadian. I don't need to get into the names because probably like me, I had, and you, we had a lot of investments and we did well in those investments. And I said to her, I said, you have to be here because if you're not here, who's gonna talk for people? See, when you're sick, it's not about the 1% of the 1% are using that understand how to use it. It's about the 2% of the 1%. It's about the 3%. It's about 4% of 1%. It's about the Bradmores, and it's about the mom with a kid with epilepsy in the suburbs. That's what matters from my perspective, from our perspective. That's actually what it takes to grow this industry. So, the problem is, and I think we can all attest to this, and you've heard it all day, it's been illegal for so long. Where's the research? Where's the data? Now, we've got a plant, and maybe we know what 30% of the things do, correct? But we also know what all the molecules do. And it's the construct, and I'm not going to get into it, I'm not a scientist, but of the entourage effect. But here's one thing I think that's really interesting about it. When you look at something like medical, like let's say for a COVID vaccine, you create a formulation, it goes through a gated process, and at the end, your objective is you come out with efficacy, and did it kill anybody? What's the downside to using it? Adverse effects. Well, isn't that interesting? We actually know that in cannabis. We know the end game, right? We've actually seen it, but how can we empirically measure it? And then how can we measure it back on a per gram basis? And so that's where the true opportunity lies. And I can tell you this, if somebody could have shown me, and a guy who's in the industry, I had a lot of people that, I'll be honest, I was blessed, I had a lot of people to talk to. Problem is I was getting a different answer from everybody. We have an office in Israel, I was talking to Israeli doctors. I was talking to Canadian people, and it was this mixed bag, and at the end of it, it boiled down to what they said to me at the cancer clinic, we don't know what to tell you. And that's a hard thing. Like, that's a hard thing to hear. So I had to do what they told me, because like I said, I didn't have the luxury. The lack of answers. Well, you know, one of the things is when you look at this industry, there's a relationship that exists, okay? And I think this is really important that we understand this. And it's something that I had to learn in 2018, where I thought the answer to this problem lied between the guy selling it and the guy consuming it. I was wrong. You know where the answer lies? Between the cultivator and the consumption. It's between these two people. No offense to anybody else, but everybody else in the middle, we're just noise. We got a job because of those two people. That's what it boils down to. I wouldn't be in this industry. I don't know, maybe I'd be selling cars if there wasn't a consumer and a cultivator. It boils down to these two people and everybody else, and it's about the relationship. And so once again, when we're looking at that ideology, and we know it's a plant, we know that we only know what 30% of it, We know that it can't be formulated, like in the construct of repeatability, and this is where I get in trouble all the time, and I say this, and I get heat over it. Clinical studies are great, but you know what? They're only great if you can repeat it. If you can repeat what happens after that every time, then it's super meaningful. And if you can't, it's just really interesting. That's how we view it, you know, and that does not go over well with scientists, right? But it's true. It's a manufacturing. Therefore, we work on the premise that growing cannabis all the way to consumption is a manufacturing process. And the manufacturing process ends when you put it in your body, because a lot of things can change. If you have a distributor somewhere in the value chain that thinks it's a good idea to save money and he adjusts his heating or ups his humidity or whatever he does, it can actually change what comes from the cultivator all the way to the retailer. And this is why it's important to track. If we're going to really truly understand, we have to look at it on a very primary basis. 1 gram grown, 1 gram consumed. So think a bit about that. Think a little bit about the tools that are actually used right now. Think about the things, like for example, in California, we were just down there, there's things to do with metric, great seed to sale technologies. Like, think about all that data. Think about who, the folks that are up here talking about EU GDP or standards. Think about all that data. What as a cultivator do you actually get out of that except you're allowed to stay in business? Well, what if the consumer actually gave you a feedback on a per gram basis? Think about that. Thousands and thousands, 50,000 grams going out from a batch, and you know what was happening on a feedback mechanism. That gets you into the wonderful world of blockchain. And this is where everybody goes, cryptocurrency. No, blockchain. So the functionality of looking at this, more than anything, is what is a blockchain? Okay? Well, a blockchain is a decentralized ledger that records every step in a product life cycle. I'll be honest with you, I spent every day for 4 months in Israel having a blockchain guy explain it to me, and it just kept bouncing off my head. And maybe I got dropped too much as a baby, but I couldn't get it. And then one day the light went on, and he goes, because when you use things about like truthfulness and transparency and trust, they're good words, but they're pretty ambiguous, right? Like they're open-ended. They can mean a lot to a lot of things in a lot of different ways. And no, he goes, no, look, the idea of the blockchain, it was facilitated to record a relationship between two people doing a transaction, putting that up, and it becomes immutable and it can't be broken. He said, well, what if, and see, that's why regulators hate it, because it takes away their job of regulating what the bank did. So, but what if you could do this? What if there's a lack of rules, meaningful rules and regulations, and you could actually use a blockchain to create enough secure data points to write meaningful rules and regulations, because it anchors something between two people. And that's where we got involved in it. So I'm going to take you to the idea of the argument, not seed to sale, but what about seed to seed? What about a big old loop? What about every step all the way through? Okay? So what does that look like? Well, it looks like this. So after we got it wrong in 2018, I spent 2019 trying to get it right. So we did a lot of work. And we got to a point where we actually filed a patent in the United States, and it was called Cannabis on the Blockchain. And we just wanted to see, is this being done, right? So it was a very expensive exercise in trying to see if we weren't crazy. And I was surprised by the lack of information out there, or attempts to actually try to get around this. There was things about doing attestations, and that's all great. It's beautiful, it's a wonderful thing. But then the real construct is we start saying, so what is the goal? The goal is to get Brad the customer, Brad the patient, to tell you what's happening on an individual basis. So you got to remember the argument, the relation starts here, it ends over here, and that of those 50,000 grams, there's 50,000 human beings. There's 15,000, let's put it this way, consumption experiences attached, right? So how do we record every one of those? Well, first of all, we got to start off with a KYC. So why does KYC matter? Well, that makes sure that none of the bad guys are getting involved. Because if bad guys put up information, and we all know what the black market looks like, but if you're a good guy and you're doing the right things, we're going to guarantee that you're a good guy. So we KYC you. It's no different than getting your license. It's just a different way of doing it. And then we get you to attest. And then so from the attestation, so really all an attestation is a way of putting data onto the blockchain. Just like in the cryptocurrency, you attest, right? And that can come from an input. It can come from taking a picture of a COA. And we all know the problem to do with COAs. Like, I hope nobody from Canopy is here, but they're under investigation from Health Canada for doctoring COAs, and I believe it's in the recreational. Like, that's crazy. Could you imagine me as a cancer patient who was sicker than a dog going to emergency like every 4 weeks and just in rough shape, and somebody mislabeled something? Like, that's not cool, right? So that information should be attested. As a consumer, I should get to see that. If you can't show me a formula, you should show me that information. Oh. Then the other thing, once that information's up there, well, I want the human experience attached to that. So what we do is we get you to attest the human experience to that individual gram. And that's the power of the blockchain. And so what happens, now you can start to track efficacy. Dosing is critical. But if you're taking the wrong thing, if somebody says it's good for shoulder bursitis, but it's good for knee swelling, then you need to know it's good for knee swelling. Then you need to understand. So you have to feed that information back. The cultivator deserves it. They're doing look, the good cultivators are out there doing the work. They're growing to a standard. They're dedicated. They love their process and their businesses. They deserve to have that information back. And they can have it back through the use of a blockchain in real time, all the time. And then a wonderful thing happens is you put a simple QR code onto that package and they can see everything. And that's a really kind of cool thing. Now, if you're in Canada, you can't put a QR code on a package. If you're in Germany, it's a narcotic, you can't. But there's different ways to be able to go around and do that. We look at the opportunity in places like Mexico with regular. Can you imagine like going to the regular, say, I can give you a guaranteed supply, safe, secure supply of data and information. Guaranteed. And you can write meaningful rules and regulations for the production and the transportation and the consumption and usage. And then you can actually turn around and you can work with the doctors. What was said by our friends of, I hope I pronounced this right, Octopi earlier, about a different way to look at medicine. That's extremely cool, right? All right, so they've got, yeah, I'm looking at this, I'm kind of thinking they've got a lot of stuff here for me to say, which I don't think really. Let me show you this. We're going to show you how we do this. I skipped inadvertently over an animation where it showed that straight line, and then it changed, and it showed these dots moving. And that was the flow of information. So we've built that system. Over the last 5 years, I've dumped about $8 million because I'm publicly traded of investors' monies. The stock's at an all-time low. They're not happy about it, but we built it. And it's ready. We're using it in Canada. We're using it in Europe. We're using it in Israel. We're using it in the United States. And hopefully now it's something that we can bring and we can use in Mexico. So this is the simple process of the KYC. Does anybody have an e-wallet, like a crypto account? Okay. Did you know the demographic on the crypto and the cannabis user is very similar? So for this, it's a very simple process. All that verification is done in the back end. This is how we do it. It's through a simple app, it's handheld, it can ingest information all the way through. The idea, once again, is to ensure that when you put it, you got to remember, you're building consumer trust, guys. When you put that information up, you have to make sure you are who you are and what you say you are and how it works. Okay? That's part of the anti-money laundering. Everything was built to an EU GDPR standard. It meets all HIPAA requirements. So as far as security goes, it's locked down, buttoned down, and it's all done off a simple iPhone. We believe here too that you as a cultivator, this is my marketing manager, by the way. He looks like a grower, but he's my marketing manager. We believe too that you as a person, as a cultivator, you got to remember, I'm asking you, or you're asking me as the patient to believe in what you're saying that you're putting up there. So I want to know who you are. Yeah, I want to know, and I was talking to the New Frontier data people, and you know, we can ingest any data. This is actually set up and designed to follow, the app is actually designed to follow all the process of an EU GDP standard, but it's relying on people putting in. But I can ingest any level of data. It's just a simple API. But you know, one of the most important pieces of data that is up there is like who you are. That's important to me. Don't ask me to put something in my body if it hasn't been gone through a vetted process through a traditional like gated clinical studies trials. So if we're going to do it this way, I need to start making connection points. We call this notarization. At the next step, what we do is we called something called a digital twin, and this is where we get in delivery. Once again, this is part of the manufacturing process. The manufacturing process doesn't end at the cultivator. It ends once it goes in your body. So we have to make sure that we record all that. Because if we don't record all that, then we're going to start to get variances. And if you only got half the information, then the consumer, when you start feeding that back to the cultivator and the regulator and everybody in between, then the information is meaningless. So the idea in the construct then is that we can feed back everything all the way through the loop. Information goes in, the QR code is on, and away we go. Now, the consumer walks in and he scans something. What does he see? Well, he sees it right here. He sees what everybody else has put on. He sees their experience. He sees what's happening in their body. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where everything connects. Because now, got to remember, this is on a per gram basis. That's powerful. We have yet to see that. We have yet to see anybody on a per gram basis. That's really hard to see. But this is what comes out of it. Take a look at this. That's exciting. Anonymized feedback. So on the app, no app required. A consumer can just scan something with the QR code. He can look at all the ratings and he can see everything in between. That's extremely powerful, right? And that means that every time when he becomes that next line item, guess what happens? He adds to that value chain. He adds to the value chain back to the cultivator. He adds to the value chain back to the regulator. And here's the most exciting part. Let's say it's got 75% efficacy in that batch. And 2 batches later, it goes down to 35%. What happened? How do we do that now? Well, we're not getting consumer feedback at this level now. So how do we know? You see where I'm going with that? So the thing is when you feed it back and he sees, my God, my efficacy dropped, the system will say, there's an outlier event. What is the outlier event? Well, Dum Dum Brad turned the heat off. And it changed the net effect of the product. So what have we done? He can get a better handle on his manufacturing process. And that's what's critical. See, if we approach cannabis this way, we solve a lot of the problems that we're talking about here today. Like, I can record your experience eating potato chips. It's all the same to me. But with cannabis, I'm not asking you to put potato chips in your body for cancer or cancer symptom treatment of cancer. What I'm asking you to do is I'm asking you to put something that might have a potential adverse effect. And then I'm asking you to do that over and over and over again. And that's what we've built here. And this is the power of the blockchain. It doesn't matter about what I've built. It's about the power of it. And I believe on Saturday, either 3 or 4 out of the companies that are doing the pitch talk about the use of blockchain or AI machine learning. The ability to run through. See, I've got a goal. I want you guys all to think about this goal. I want to measure what happens with 233,000 people over 2 years consuming 600 grams over 2 years and measuring their heart rate, because that's kind of a very interesting component of it, over a 4-hour period for each consumption. You know how many data points I would get from that? 1 trillion. If you're going to tell me I can't figure out what the average efficacy, what it is to work on shoulder bursitis, and what the right product is over a period of time, then I think we're going to all struggle. But technology can do things now that we haven't had the ability to do before. And that's what our focus is. I would ask all of us to think about that in context of working towards regulators, to ask them to be a little bit braver, to think about doing things differently. In Israel, the Israeli regulator, I don't know how many people are from Israel here or worked with an Israeli regulator. They've actually allowed one of our cultivators using the system to do their regulatory reporting using this system. That's a big thing. That's one of the most rigid systems in the world. And we're going to keep pounding on those same doors in Canada. We see a lot of opportunity in the United States, and I think it's greenfield, blue sky opportunity to have these conversations in Mexico. The last thing that I wanted to cover off with you here, we just launched this actually the other day in Spanish too. Well, I'm all about forward-looking information. I do believe the place and opportunities for historical information. This might look like a multitude of different products that you've looked at, what works for it, uses machine learning. There's 9,000 hereditary strains in there. We have all we have their hereditary trees, all their genetics. One of the things you can do if you're a cultivator, come talk to me. Because what the Israelis have allowed us to do is to upload your genetics in there. A machine learning AI algorithm will get in, find the cross points, and then do you a predictive analysis of a consumer experience. And then what you do is now you have a baseline average, you use Prescripti to kind of measure against that. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you very, very much. Thank you, Lorena. Thank you, Mariana. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time.